we want to give service members the education and the tools so that they can make educated decisions with their TSP or Thrift Savings Plan or any number of financial topics.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tinker Talks. Tinker Talks is the audio format podcast that discusses happenings behind the fence line of one of the Air Force's largest Air Force bases, that is Tinker Air Force Base. I'm your host, Mark Hybers, and today we are continuing discussions and conversations about the current news topic that's just basically taken over the world right now, and that is the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. Specifically, this episode, we're going to talk about financial impacts, kind of what the do's and don'ts, and maybe some helpful tips or resources available for people who may be impacted by coronavirus. As it stands right now, there are over 33 million people that have filed for unemployment in the United States. So obviously, somewhere out there, we have seen impacts even to our airmen or civilian airmen, one way or the other. Some of us have been fortunate enough to not fall into that the unemployment. But there are spouses and there are things that are happening. And of course, one of the other major impacts has been the stock market that has kind of gone all over the place, which would, of course, affect TSP, the Thrift Savings Plan, which most of us or many of us have our retirements in. So today to talk with us about this is Gia Easley, and she is from the Force Support Squadron. And so good morning. Do we call you Gia? Is that the name you go by?
Yes, it is.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for taking time to join us today. And just so people will know, this is actually Tinker Talk's first time we have broadcast or put this podcast together from remotely. So I am sitting in my office at my home, and Gia, I think you're at home in your office or setup.
Correct. Yes, I am.
Okay, good. So just to throw a warning out there, if you hear dogs and things barking, we were talking about this before we started recording, knocks on the door, or mailmen, or even joggers passing by, you may hear dogs from my house or your house. So not to be alarmed, but this is the time that we're living in. We're doing this safely and distantly, and we're both teleworking. So good. So before we get started, Gia, if you wouldn't mind, could you kind of give the listeners the 200-word or less breakdown about who you are and how you got to this position at the Force Support Squadron?
Sure. So my name is Gia Easley, and I'm an Air Force veteran and also a military spouse. So we have PCS'd and trotted kind of around the globe. And I've had the pleasure of working with service members from all branches of military life, and it's just a passion that I have to work with service members and veterans. I'm a financial counselor, so I'm an accredited financial counselor, and so I love talking about money. I love talking about investing and saving, and all of that fun stuff. So that is me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Good stuff. And so how long have you been here at Tinker?
We have been here, January will be 5 years. I've actually worked at Airmen and Family Readiness Center since January 2015.
Wow, that's awesome. And you're a spouse. So does that mean that eventually you're going to be pulling up stakes and leaving us?
No, we have decided to stick around in Oklahoma. Actually, my husband, he officially retires on 1 June, so we are here for the long haul.
Ah, congratulations! That's the retirement ceremony will probably look different than it has in the past.
Yeah, 100%. We had a big shindig planned for Memorial Day weekend months ago, and of course that is not going to happen. So we're still trying to figure out what to do.
Right. Awesome. So just one of the many impacts by the current world that we're living in. And so as we get into our conversation, of course, one of the biggest things that that has happened is the real downward flow of the stock market, and then kind of where it's now going, it's bouncing back and forth. And of course, the stocks, I think, is what primarily makes up how people get their retirements through the Thrift Savings Plan. So, what can you tell us about something people out there should look at if they're worried about their Thrift Savings Plan? Like, is it going to be okay to retire? Are they doomed? Are they going to have to work an extra 20 years? Can you give us some insight and maybe some helpful tips on this?
Sure. So one thing I'd like to just kind of throw out there, a good old disclaimer, is that our job at Airman and Family is to provide financial education, not so much financial advice. So,
Gotcha.
but we want to give service members the education and the tools so that they can make educated decisions with their TSP or Thrift Savings Plan or any number of financial topics. So with the Thrift Savings Plan, and as you said, COVID-19 has thrown us many challenges, and certainly seeing our TSP accounts kind of decrease is certainly reason for some people to have a little bit of anxiety. But what I'd like to remind people is that TSP, it's our 401k plan. And so the important thing to keep in mind with 401k plans is that they're designed to provide income. They're designed as a vehicle for us to save in order to provide income for us when we're no longer earning a steady paycheck. So in our retirement years.
Right.
And so with 401k plans, you're actually penalized if you try and access that money prior to being 59 and a half years or older. So hopefully many people have time on their hands before they reach retirement age. And so many of us will have time for our TSPs to rebound. Right. And for those who might be knocking on retirement's door, the hope is that the closer you are to retirement, the more you're safeguarding your investments. And TSP has 5 core funds, mm-hmm. and those funds, they also have a life cycle fund. And basically, if you put your money in TSP in a life cycle fund, then it kind of safeguards your money the closer you get to retirement age anyway. So it just depends on which funds your money is in. So
right.
I know for me.
Right, go ahead. Go ahead.
I know for me, I have quite a while until I'm retiring, and so I have chosen. I just don't look. I don't look at my account balance right now.
I'm with you too, because it's probably smart to look, but I also have a way to go. So I have chosen to not open it up and look at it for fear of getting anxiety levels up of my own. I just I trust the process, and the smart people out there, when they tell you to just leave it alone and let it go, and it'll come back and bounce back. But great advice, though, for those who are coming up closer on retirement, to get in there and change that. You called it a what was it? The life cycle.
Life cycle funds,
right.
and they're basically time horizon funds based on the time that you will be retiring. And so the closer you inch toward retirement, these life cycle funds automatically shift your money into safer funds.
Right. So
without you doing anything.
Do you guys, when you give kind of some advice, like, you're not financial planners, but you do sort of educate people in these areas, and kind of more of what they mean, not what they should do or how they should set them up. But have you guys received maybe an increase in calls lately from people who did get concerned about what they should do, or should they be worried? Are you guys seeing those in your office, or is it pretty much kind of normal right now?
Whenever COVID first came on the scene, I was getting calls from service members, but also even my colleagues would come down to my office and ask me, hey, should I do this or that?
Hmm.
So it was a concern there whenever, COVID first came on the scene. And I've kind of seen a decrease in that now.
Right.
I don't know if people are just kind of adjusting accordingly and the anxiety is lessening maybe, but we haven't seen as many lately calls.
Right. And that's kind of, hopefully that's a good thing, but also maybe more of a sign of as people start to adjust to this new normal. But I know when we were talking, back in early March, and we were discussing kind of what types of podcasts we would be looking into coming down the road. This was one of the ones we talked about early, and it was really before the big unemployments had hit and the stock market started fluctuating all over the place. But I mean, you knew that eventually financially people at Tinker are going to be impacted by this, and then what types of resources are available to help them. So I guess if we get into the retirement funds, you said there are 5 that people look at within the TSP?
Yeah, so within TSP, there are 5 what they call core funds.
Mm-hmm.
There's the G fund, which is basically short-term U.S. treasuries and securities. And the G fund is just available for us government employees.
Okay.
Of course, that's in uniform or out.
Right.
And it's a very, very safe fund. You're not going to lose your principal in that fund. But by design, the G fund is it's designed kind of to keep up with the rate of inflation. So as far as earning potential, you might not have as much earning potential in the G fund.
Right.
In the G fund.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the F fund, and there you're primarily investing in bonds. Also a fairly safe fund. So that's the F fund, and then you get into your equities or your stock market. You have the C fund, that's your common stock fund, and these are index funds. And so index funds really have a built-in kind of safety net, because in an index fund, you're investing in, if you want to think of it like a huge basket of different types of companies. And so the C fund, it's the 500 largest companies in the United States. It's set up to mirror the S&P 500.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's just a whole host of different types of companies. So there's healthcare companies, oil companies, tech companies, all that react a little bit differently to what's going on in the news.
Wow.
And then the S fund, so the C fund was your big, large corporations. Your S fund are your small to medium-sized corporations. Again, it's still that index fund. The S fund is set up to mirror the Dow Jones. And so again, there's built-in safety because of all the various types of companies within the fund.
Right.
And then the last one is the I fund. These are your international funds. These are companies, you're investing in the I fund. You're investing in companies that are headquartered outside of the United States. But many of the companies people would have heard of, like Nestle, for instance, that's headquartered in Switzerland, or BP Oil, that's headquartered in Great Britain. So that's the I fund. So those are the 5 core funds in TSP.
Okay. Are there smaller funds, or are these basically the when you log in, this is kind of what you're putting your percentages into, and then another company kind of handles what that actually means?
So whenever you log into TSP, you just have an option of these 5 funds.
Okay.
You can't like cherry pick stocks. You can't say, hey, I want to invest in Apple but not Coca-Cola,
right,
or Microsoft but not Google. But what these funds do, and it's managed by BlackRock Trust. Okay. It's not managed by anybody other than that, right, by the government. So. But the life cycle funds that I was speaking of, what those do is if you contribute to a life cycle fund, it it diversifies between all five of the funds I spoke of for you, and it dials back your risk every single quarter the closer you get to retirement age.
I see. So you could be really aggressive, and then it just kind of scales you back. It's kind of great. It's a good setup. And, for people like me who, I wouldn't have the first clue of getting out there and trying to figure out all of these companies to try to invest in. So it is kind of nice, I guess, if you're a layman like I am, that they're put into these five separate categories, and then experts go ahead and take care of that, and it's their job to make sure that they're trying to get it into the best possible scenario, because sure takes the smart work out of it for folks like me. But so does your office also, like, say I wanted to come in and talk about this, is this kind of what you would talk through with people who schedule appointments to come in and they're looking at setting up TSP or making changes to TSP, kind of what we just discussed? Is that what your office would do?
Yes, that's exactly what we would do. And we very much encourage people to come in and ask questions, and we can explain, as I said, we can educate them on the various funds and what the annual return rates or the monthly return rates have historically been. Just to kind of give people the knowledge and also peace of mind that their money's working hard for them, even when they go to sleep at night. And that's the important piece, I think, to investing for our retirement is that we want to make sure our money is working as hard for us as we can.
Right. And it's definitely, as you said, and we can't say this strongly enough, and it's important to know that people should not call your office and think that they're coming in for financial planning and advice, because that is, you're just educating. You're not pointing in any specific directions, but I think through the knowledge and stuff that you guys give out, even looking over historical trends, I think you're really setting people up with a good deal of knowledge to go get successful on how they invest. And so, is there a specific amount now that people maybe have been affected by the COVID-19, this pandemic, should people start going in and fluctuating the percentages? And what is a basic recommendation? Is it 5%? There's a kind of what is given back, or I'm not sure what the words I'm looking for. That the match. There's a match.
The
correct?
match.
Yes.
Well, there's a match for civilian employees like myself and you. There's a match as long as we're contributing at least 5%. Mm-hmm. We get essentially another 5% added by DoD to our account for us. And then service members, there's kind of two categories. People who are under the quote unquote old or legacy retirement plan, mm-hmm. they do not receive a match. But people under the blended retirement plan, they do in fact receive a match. And it's the same, the 5%. If you invest 5%, if you contribute 5%, you will then get another 5%.
Gotcha. Okay. And so do you guys also offer some other types of financial assistance or like resources? So let's say you have an airman that comes in and the airman is fine and still employed, but perhaps a spouse who has a second income that's a necessity for this airman to exist and keep a roof over their head and the family fed. Do you guys offer other types of resources where people can go who have been impacted financially?
Absolutely, we do. So we are everyone that works at Airmen and Family Readiness Center are Air Force Aid caseworkers, and Air Force Aid Society is the Air Force's official charity that offers 0% interest loans for people with an emergency situation. So if my spouse was, unable to work because of COVID, we'll just use COVID, of course, as the example.
Right.
And then that affected our ability to pay our rent. Then the service member would just apply for Air Force Aid online and then come in and talk to us, and we could potentially get them a 0% interest loan for that rent, or maybe a car payment, or something of an emergency nature, or pay their electric bill because they were affected by this situation, or any emergency situation.
Right. So there are resources available. So, and you said is that something they do online? Do you have a web address for that, or should they contact your office to talk about it?
It's they could contact our office. Just we can give them eligibility information and such, and we would also provide the website. But it's afas.org.
afas.org. Okay, yeah,
Correct.
that's good to know, and I'm sure just because they're if you're active duty, they're out still fighting the good fight and doing the mission and have not impacted personally, but surely there are a great deal of spouses and second incomes that are, like I said, are a necessity to keep the food on the table for the family. So that's a great resource for people to go look into, and definitely don't just try to. I mean, even do you ever talk to people who might feel like they're too proud to try to ask for that assistance?
Certainly on occasion that might be somebody's thought, is that they might not want to reach out for that, but that's what that Air Force Aid is designed for, is to help out when we're in a pinch, when we're in an emergency situation.
Right. And so here's a big one, and I'm sure when people really get down to a desperate situation, there are ways to borrow from your TSP, right? But if you're talking planning with people, if they borrow from their TSP, what are some impacts of that, both positive and negative, I guess?
So I always, borrowing money from a 401k or from TSP is certainly a personal choice for each individual. But I always try to seek out other avenues for money instead of borrowing from TSP, particularly in a situation like this. But so like Air Force Aid that I was talking about, if somebody's having an issue paying their mortgage or something, certainly that would be a better route to go, perhaps than borrowing from their TSP. But it is definitely an option. The TSP charges you $50 for the application fee, and then you're actually charged interest at the rate of the G fund that I was speaking about earlier at the time you pull that loan out.
Gotcha. Which is based on inflation, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I said, go ahead. So some people.
Oh, and so some people, maybe borrowing from their TSP is certainly the best option for them. I just always try and present other options as well, just because you are, taking money out of an account that's designed to help you whenever you retire.
Right. Good information. It's there, but definitely not the recommended choice. If you can help it, try one of the other avenues to get help. And so, do you have does your office have a phone number where people might be able to contact and set up any types of appointments to get information they need?
Absolutely. Our office, our front desk number is area code 405-739-2747.
2747.
And you just call that number, and it's super simple, easy to set up an appointment. And we have 3 accredited financial counselors that work at Airmen and Family, and then 1 other person who is working on their certification. So
awesome, great amount of resources. And of course, even if you don't want to make that call first, get your chain of command involved, or talk to your first sergeant or somebody that can kind of help put your mind at ease and get you on that road to getting the help and assistance you need. So with that, Gia, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and in your makeshift new office, and joining us on this podcast. Is a good amount of information, and hopefully we are able to come through this pretty soon with as minimal financial impacts as possible. So with that, everybody, and thanks again, Gia. You're our very first for a remote podcast, but so well done to you. But safety first, and right now we don't have a good way to social distance enough, and some of us teleworking and coming through this together. So with that, everybody, that's going to wrap up another episode of the Tinker Talks podcast. Please be sure to join us. We put out an episode about every 2 weeks or so. It's been a little tougher these days with the work statuses and trying to shift into our new normal way of doing business right now. But also, check us out on our social media sites. That's at Tinker Air Force Base on Facebook and Instagram, and of course at @team_Tinker on Twitter. And we also have a coronavirus website on the tinker.af.mil website, so please check that out. It is packed with information. And if the Air Force Aid Society, the resources that Gia just talked to us about, if they are not on that website already, we will make sure to also include that on the website, and it'll be on the show notes. So that'll do it for now. Until our next episode, please stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you soon.